Hello and welcome to the Gooner Talk, back again with you guys for another episode of what is the Arsenal Transfer Show, joining you every morning at 8 a.m. UK time. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Thank you as always for making this a part of your morning routines. It is very much appreciated. Good morning those joining us in the chat box. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Let's say good morning to those that have joined in live, although I think StreamYard has mugged people off here, unfortunately. So I'm going to have to hop over to YouTube and see who got in there first. Indeed, we've got Black Shine, we've got Lynn, we've got Martin, Gooner Boy, we've got Gregory. Well, even YouTube is starting to now cut off the early joiners. So many people joining in, leaving so many comments before the show even starts that unfortunately, we're seeing some comments cut off, but that's an amazing amount of people that we see joining us every morning these days. So good morning. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. It's very much appreciated. I hope that you've had a great weekend and I hope you're ready for a brand new week. More transfer news. The weekend is usually quite quieter. Reason being is, of course, during the off-season, people do take breaks. You may be surprised to learn that, but, people at clubs that are involved in negotiations do take breaks. And not only that, but we see the international games going on, which obviously slows down the process somewhat as well. But with the week beginning anew today, it being Monday, of course, we're expecting, hopefully this week, to bear some positive news on the Arsenal transfer front. And we've got plenty to talk about in today's show as well, both with incomings and outgoings. So without further ado, let's crack on. Do make sure you've dropped a like on the video and subscribe to the channel as well if you haven't done so already. First of all, Balogun scoring as the US won 2-0 in the CONCACAF Nations League final. He's played, 2 games, and he's already won a trophy in his cabinet with Matt Turner and Austin Trusty, of course, also involved in the US men's national team. Great achievement, of course, for them. And it was a fantastic goal that Balogun scored, getting on the end of a pass from Gio Reyna and finishing absolutely fantastically well. Every time I watch Balogun play, it's almost like I'm starting to have to rethink, reconsider. And it's almost like, if this guy is scoring at this kind of rate and, playing so well, can Arsenal really afford to let him leave? Can Arsenal really afford to allow a risk of letting him go for like £35 million or so, which is probably around the figure they would get, and watch him go and absolutely smash it elsewhere? It's a question that Mikel Arteta needs to answer. And they need to be looking at, obviously, him in pre-season. We don't know when a resolution of his future will come. We don't know if there's an offer been made at this point by any teams, but there's lots of teams interested, from Inter to RB Leipzig to Crystal Palace to other sides. There's plenty of sides that are very interested in him. But I am intrigued to see what ends up happening, and if Arsenal, and who knows, maybe Arteta will change his mind, maybe Balogun will change his mind, because to be honest, it's not, I don't think, about the club. I think it's more so about Balogun, and we have to convince him that you're going to have to be in competition with Gabriel Jesus. But if you play well and you score and you're doing what you do, you can continue to play. You think about Emil Smith-Rowe, you think about Gabriel Martinelli, those two have shared that left wing role, and Martinelli has been the better player in the recent year and has taken over that position despite Arsenal giving Emil Smith-Rowe a brand new contract, So I feel as though that Arteta does tend to reward the players that are in form, maybe even to a fault sometimes. So if Balogun can get into some good form, can play fantastically well, take his chances, I'm sure that he would get those minutes. But it's also the fact that Eddie Nketiah is still at the club, and that dynamic is, I think, creating a few barriers. Moving forward, an unfortunate medical situation with Fabio Vieira means that he will not play at the Under-21s Euro tournament this summer. It's an unspecified problem, so I'd encourage people not to speculate about what the issue is at this stage. But the facts of the matter is that it's been reported out there in Portugal that Fabio Vieira will not be part of the Under-21 squad taking part of this summer's tournament. The player had been going through some kind of post-season drills with the club to get him fit and ready. But apparently the Portuguese youth side have decided not to take a risk on Fabio Vieira, and he will not indeed play in the tournament. We'll hope for an update on Fabio Vieira's health and hope everything's okay. But as I say, it's just not worth speculating on things like this. But we hope everything is all good and well. Now, Mikel Arteta, apparently according to Chilean outlets, has turned down a request from Alexis Sanchez. I know this story popped up a few days ago, but it's again cropped up again, and I wanted to include it in today's stories. But yeah, apparently Arteta returned down a request from Alexis Sanchez to return to Arsenal. Now, Alexis had a very decent season with Marseille last year, and is open to a potential move and seemed keen on a return to Arsenal. Last year, he got 14 goals and 3 assists playing in 35 Liga appearances. So more league goals, of course, than Gabriel Jesus. He did play more games, of course, but it was a good record. He finished the season with 18 goals in 44 matches. But Arteta turning down the approach, apparently, from Alexis. And I agree with Omar in the chat. I think he regrets his decision to leave Arsenal. We heard from him in an interview after he left Man United that he basically regretted leaving Arsenal almost the moment that he did. He took that first training session at Manchester United and apparently rang back to Arsenal and called to see if he could come back. Well, we all make our choices and we have to live with them. And unfortunately, it doesn't seem that decision was the right one for Alexis. But he had a very good season last year, and I hope that he goes on to do good things next season, wherever he indeed does end up. Now, Kai Havertz and the talks between Arsenal and Kai Havertz and Chelsea continue to move. They are in a positive situation. Sam Dean has reported that indeed talks have progressed quickly for Kai Havertz, and that we hopefully will see some improvements in this deal. We hopefully might see some movement in this deal very soon. He has told Chelsea that he wants to move to Arsenal, according to Fabrizio Romano, and that these talks are going on. As we know, Arsenal have already had one bid rejected at around £55 million, and there's an expectation that maybe at £60 million the deal can get done. In which case we will see how that plays out. As I've said a number of times on the channel, I think those are people that are ruling out this, that have just dismissed at this point already. I think you're brave. I commend your braveness, but I just hope that you're going to show the same energy if he ends up proving you wrong. And I look forward to hopefully seeing him do that, because we want him to succeed, of course, if he is indeed to move to Arsenal. Now, yesterday we saw reports that there is a concrete chance, according to Fabrizio Romano, that Saudi interest in Thomas Partey could, he reported there's a concrete chance he could leave. And then we saw reports from Saudi Arabia claiming that there is interest from the region in Thomas Partey and that he could indeed leave the club during this summer transfer window. It's an interesting one. At the start of the transfer window, I discussed how I thought this whole window was always going to be about reinforcing the squad with the existing quality players that we have, and I include Thomas Partey in that. But I kind of look at the situation and think, well, if he goes, surely we're looking at 3 midfielders, and not including Havertz, that need to be brought into the Arsenal squad this summer. Obviously we've made a bid for Rice, and we're pushing for the Rice deal. There's no updates on that, by the way, unfortunately, today. And the Ilkay Gundogan situation, obviously we've made an offer to Ilkay Gundogan in terms of signing him on a free contract, and of course there's other targets as well, one we'll talk about in a second. But it's almost as if the Partey exit alongside Granit Xhaka, it's kind of a midfield overhaul that I didn't really expect to take place. I thought that we would strengthen significantly, invest significantly in the midfield, but I did not think there would be, as Reece says here in the chat box, a bit of a hitting of the reset button for the midfield. But with both Xhaka and Partey, into their 30s, aging somewhat, maybe we are looking to overhaul things significantly this summer. And I do get, why we might want to do that, but I did kind of want to see one of Partey or Xhaka at least stay, one of those two stay, and us reinforce and know that we've got good depth this season. Obviously, we do have Jorginho at the club still, and Jorginho maybe is quickly overlooked sometimes. He actually replaced Partey at the end of last season in a number of games, and Arteta seemed to trust Jorginho more toward the end of the season than Partey, after his form dipped off quite significantly. And also Partey's injury issues, of course, have plagued his time at the club too. So there are a number of reasons that maybe this is what is going on, but we'll keep you up to date if there are any developments. And of course, with the way that Chelsea are making significant money from selling players, it seems, to the Saudi Arabian area and the clubs there, maybe Arsenal can benefit off that as well and make a significant fee for the Ghanaian international. Now, our last story of the day is indeed that talks are ongoing, according to Fabrizio Romano, for Romeo Lavia, the Belgian international and Southampton midfielder, 19-year-old, very exciting player, seen as a potential cheaper alternative to Moises Caicedo. It seems that Arsenal's interest in Caicedo has withered to a point where they're just not feeling it financially, and they don't think that deal is worth doing. And so Lavia looks to be a potential alternative that is significantly cheaper, potentially available for half the price of Caicedo, 2 years younger than Caicedo, and impressing in the Premier League. Been in the Premier League level around the same period of time as Caicedo as well. So Lavia seen as a real alternative. I'm going to try and bring you a tactical breakdown on him at some point. I want to make sure that I get the right expert insight for you on this, so that we have the best kind of information around who he is, what he would bring, and all of that good stuff. But if you want to hear more discussion about the midfield side of things and the overhaul of the midfield, yesterday myself and Mike from the Gooners pod sat down and we had a whole hour-long chat about the midfields, about Lavia, about Rice, about Partey's potential exit, about the impact of Saudi Arabian clubs on the exits that we might see from the Premier League. We talked about Moises Caicedo. We talked about Ilkay Gundogan. Kai Havertz popped up in conversation as well. And we talked about a lot of things in that regard. So I would encourage you to go and check that one out if you haven't done so already. Even if it's just, as Matt G says, to see the unicorn in the background. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go and watch the show, and then you'll have an idea indeed what we were discussing. But that brings us to an end of part one. So we're going to move to part two and your questions right after this. Right then, let's jump into the chat box, shall we, and see what you guys have got to say on the topics that we are indeed discussing. Let's go to Balaj. Says, Tom, yesterday a £55 million deal was agreed for a player who only had 1 year remaining on his contract at Wolves. Do you think this is a fair valuation of the player considering his age and contract? My argument would be no. That said, obviously the Wolves have kind of exploited, if you like, the financial capacity of these Saudi Arabian sides and have negotiated themselves a very good, I think it's £47 million, 55 million euros deal for Ruben Neves. It's one of those things. I remember when we were, I don't know if it was all the way, I don't remember when Oscar moved to China. Let me have a quick check. Moves to, was it Shanghai or Beijing? It was, let me find it. Why? All I'm getting is why did Oscar move to China? I need when. Oscar Star, I have no regrets about leaving for Chelsea. Just give me the information. That's all. Shanghai SIPG was the team he moved for, and that was in 20. It's still not telling me. Well, I don't know why I can't just get the information I want. Oscar, let me find his Wikipedia page. That'll tell. I'm sure that you people are typing frantically into the chat box when it was 2017. So we would thank you in the chat box, by the way. We were doing the show. I've been doing the show for about a year, because I took over TGT in 2016. And I remember doing shows talking about how Arsenal could exploit the fact that Chinese clubs suddenly had lots of money, and there was a big push from the Chinese government to kind of improve their footballing infrastructure. That's obviously really fallen away in recent years. And now the Saudi Arabian clubs are looking to be the next kind of big thing, it seems. And they want to obviously bring in, there's a much bigger push as well, it seems, to try and improve the league. Cristiano Ronaldo coming in, Karim Benzema and N'Golo Kante, now Ruben Neves. Okay, Gundogan is being targeted as well. And if Thomas Partey is to be joining them, it's a big push, a more significant push, it seems. And maybe one with the money that's there, they can kind of sustain as well. So it's difficult to know. It's difficult to kind of even kind of come to a consistent view on what a player's value it if they're moving over there. I've seen links that Koulibaly could make back the 30 million that Chelsea paid Napoli for him. I know they're looking at potentially Ziyech and Mendy as well moving there. And obviously, I think there's Saudi investment into one of Todd Bowley's companies potentially. I'm not 100% sure on that, but you can kind of see the connection starting to form. So I am intrigued about how this will affect things. And obviously how many years down the line we will have to wait and see until Saudi Arabia kind of rivals things. Well, who knows whether a Club World Cup that FIFA want to kind of expand beyond what the competition is to that we know it right now, and that will certainly begin to change things. So yeah, let's wait and see. Let's go to Tom. Says, if we sell Partey, could we hope that Arteta convinces Xhaka to stay one last season? It feels crazy to remove 2/3 of the midfield that made us title contenders. And I think, Tom, that it's a fair concern. And I have shared this concern. I don't know what it's going to mean for Arsenal next season if we lose 2 of the 3 players that were a big part of that midfield. So I don't know is the answer. I just hope that we get in the substantial amount of quality and numbers that we'll need to cope with those exits. Melessi says, with all due respect, we don't seem to have a solid transfer plan if the likes of Lavia, who just give me Lukonga vibes, really, are lined up for a window where we are likely to only sign 3 or 4 players. I mean, with all due respect to you, Melessi, I don't agree. I think, Arsenal have planned things for quite some time regarding the targets they want to go for. Lavia, the comparison from Lavia to Lukonga, I don't think makes any sense. Lukonga was playing for Anderlecht in Belgium, whereas Lavia's got a full season under his belt with Southampton, the Premier League, and stood out in that side. And not only that, but obviously then overtook Lukonga and is now, a regular call-up to the Belgian national side. So with respect, I don't agree. Joe says, Tom, there is a Sky Sports video with the German journalist mentioning Kai Havertz's move to Arsenal for 80 million and add-ons. If that's the price, why would we say no? Are you able to confirm this? No, I've not seen that anywhere. 80 million seems ridiculously low. Maybe he's talking about potential installments, but as far as I'm aware, the deal is going to be, upwards of 55, 60 kind of million pounds for Havertz. So we'll have to wait and see on confirmation. But it seemed I've never seen that. I never heard that, I'm afraid. Delts, thank you so much for becoming a brand new member or potentially continuing your membership. I can't quite remember, but thank you for the continued support on the channel as always. Stephen says, new TGT subscriber here in LA. Thanks for the great content. Thank you for tuning in and very much appreciate your viewership. With the focus on midfield, are you concerned we're not beefing up our defence if we're going to compete in the Premier League and the Champions League? I'm not concerned yet, Stephen. No, because obviously there's a lot of the window, still left. We are 5 days into it at this moment in time. So Arsenal's priorities are kind of sorting out the midfield, and obviously this Kai Havertz deal is taking a bit of priority. Once these sagas are hopefully sorted and, hopefully we see a kind of a resolution maybe in the next week or so, then I imagine that the attention will more draw towards the fullback areas, the defensive areas. We absolutely need to strengthen those areas. So let's wait and see. Josh says, is Rob Holding leaving? Well, the club are open for him to leave. If there's, an offer from a club to sign him, the club are open to allowing him to leave. So we'll have to wait and see if that happens. But certainly the club are open to that. So there you go. I have to agree with Charlie on the Lukonga comparison to Lavia. Lavia was brilliant when he played for Southampton against us. And I'd absolutely recommend going and watching that game as a reference point. Chun Ho says, with Chelsea getting money from some of their players selling to the Saudi Arabian sides, do you still think that we can get Havertz on the cheap? No, I don't. They've already rejected 55 million. So no, I don't see us getting a cheap deal for Havertz at all. Cheaper than what they want, which is about 70 to 75 million. But no, I don't think it's going to be relatively cheap. That said, apparently the club internally see this as kind of a must do, like a cannot miss opportunity to sign Havertz at this stage of his career at this price. So that's why they're very keen on the idea. So yeah, we'll have to it'll be interesting to see what happens there. Luke says, thoughts on Amadou Onana? Could you see him linked with us? Really physical, imposing, and play really well against us. So I'm more inclined to see him at Arsenal than Lavia. I'm not surprised. He's probably more what I would say is developed than Lavia is. I'm just not the Onana side thing. I'm just not sure about the technical side, the ability on the ball. Yes, he's very physical. Yes, he's good at defending. Yes, he's a decent passer. I'm just not sure on the technical side if he fits what Arteta is looking for, whereas Lavia certainly on the ball is really good, and I would say better than Onana in that regard. And I think Arteta is looking for better players on the ball, and I think Lavia is that more so than what Onana is. Marcus says, realistically, what midfielders do we go for? If Partey and Xhaka go, do we look for someone like Everton's Onana? I think the realistic, obviously, midfielders you're looking at right now are Rice, Lavia, and it seems Gundogan at the moment until he makes a decision is the third. But maybe that will switch to an Onana or somebody else if indeed one of those three doesn't end up happening. Delt says, I was gratefully gifted a membership once. I've been watching for roughly 3 years. Just wanted to say thanks. Well, Delt, thank you so much. I do remember when we saw those, a raft of gifted memberships. That was great. It was always great to see. And it doesn't actually show me in StreamYard when that happened. So everyone was going mad in the chat box. And I remember having to jump over to the YouTube to see what had happened. And I think, was it Francois that gifted like loads of memberships over the Christmas period? That was great. I really enjoyed seeing that. It was fantastic. Very generous indeed. And Neil says, Tom, Chelsea paid 80 million euros for Havertz. I can't see us giving them their money back for someone who's not really been a success. I think we're looking to try and get him for obviously below what Chelsea paid, but his value, if you think about the fact that he's still 24, scoring a goal in a Champions League final, there's a lot of question marks about him. He's not obviously, I don't think, fulfilled his potential, but with the length of contract he's still got left there as well, I think at least 2, maybe 3 years remaining on his deal, you're not going to see a massive drop in what his monetary value would be. So the 50 to 60 million pounds, what Arsenal could end up paying for him is probably about what his market value would be. I think it's a huge risk, and I have said that, numerous times, and it will be certainly on Arteta regarding, it would be on Arteta if it fails, because he's the one that's clearly pushing for it. So that's what we have to think about. November's very own says, hey, Tom, may I ask what records are on your wall? You absolutely may. Up there is Spread Love by Makoto, which is a very, very fantastic Hospital Records classic remade. You've got Motions of Change, which again is Makoto up top. That is a Forza Horizon 5 Hospital Records radio thing. It's like, let me find out if I've got I think I do. Yeah, there you go. So the Forza Horizon 5 kind of hospital radio, all on vinyl. That's Foals and Life Is Yours. That's the album I was looking for, which was one of the songs on my wedding day in vinyl as well. And then that one is Everything Not Lost Will Be Saved, which was the 2021 part 1 album. So there you go. That's all of the all of the records that are behind me. But I've got like a ridiculous number. Recently got Subfocus's new album as well, which is this one, which is quite cool because it changes. Signed as well, Subfocus. So you got to appreciate that. So yeah, very much into the vinyl stuff recently as well. Phil says, hey Tom, just wanted to say enjoy your trip to Copenhagen. I'm not that far from there, so we may bump into each other at some point. Who knows? But the weather has been hot, so be prepared. Yeah, it's been very hot here as well. I'm going to be heading to Copenhagen next week. I think it's next week. Yes, 28th to the 30th I'll be in Copenhagen. Very much looking forward to a couple of days away. I am still going to try to bring you the show. No promises, but I am going to try and bring you the show. I'm only there for, one full day. I'm traveling on the Wednesday, coming back on the Friday. So it's only a short trip. My other half is out there for a conference for a week, and then I'm going out there to meet up with her at the end. So it should be a good trip, though. And, I'm still aiming to bring you content while I'm out there. Don't you worry. I look forward to it. Kunyal says, any news on outgoings? Well, not loads, to be honest. Obviously, we've discussed Partey today, and Xhaka we know is of interested by Leverkusen, and we expect that deal to go through once Arsenal have secured their replacements in midfield. But I think the issue that Arsenal have right now is that the players that we have. So I think Rob Holding, Nicola Pepe, Sambi Lokonga, Alex Runarsson. I have to remind myself of some of the players, actually. There's so many of them that we could end up moving on this season. Carl Hein. We've got, who else have we got? There's actually not as many more as I thought, because Reece Nelson's staying now. Eddie Nketiah, of course, Folarin Balogun, Cedric, Arthur Okonkwo, Austin Trusty, Nuno Tavares. These players, like, if you think about their profiles, they're not going to be priorities for people. They're not going to be priority targets for clubs to try and sign. These are the types of players, unfortunately, it's a kind of state of the affair with Arsenal. These are the types of players that are sold towards the end of the window, when clubs have missed out on the players that they wanted and they still need to bring in the depth. So they need to Arsenal are going to probably have to be patient in selling some of those players, because they're the types of players that will leave towards the end of the window when opportunities and clubs are rushing and panicking to get in players, or they've lost a player and they need a replacement. They're the types of players that are going to move towards the end. So I'd say to people, and I would encourage you to kind of hold off on expecting big movement in terms of outgoings at the start of the window in the players that I've mentioned, because I think that we're more likely to see those players move on in late July, August time than June, early July time. But I could be wrong, but that's what I would imagine is going to happen. The Walking Man says, what's happening with Charlie Patino? The expectation is that he would still move. I did reach out to somebody close to the player last week, and they did say there was no update at this stage. So unless things are being kept very quiet, there's been any update or change on that situation. It's the same, that there's an intention. There's an openness from Arsenal to allow him to leave. There's obviously Arsenal would be keen to tie him down to a buyback clause if he was to move on. But there's no update on Patino at the moment. But I did try and chase a line up on that, but there's been no change in that situation yet. As I say, unless things are being kept very quiet. Mohamed says, do you think we need a captain figure rather than with skill? Because we've got plenty of skill. I think we've got loads of captain figures, Mohamed, to be honest. I think Ramsdale, I think Ben White, I think Gabriel, I think Odegaard's, obviously Xhaka when he was here as well. I think Gabriel Jesus, Zinchenko. I think we've got loads of leadership figures, to be honest, in the team. Lots of candidates that are part of that. And Declan Rice, captain of West Ham, bringing him in, future England captain for me, obviously is a really big addition as well. So I think we have got lots of leadership figures actually in the side. And skill can be also combined with leadership. They're not exclusive to one another. They are, you can have both. So I don't think it's a case of one or the other. Paul says, Tom, it's reported that Tierney might be staying. Well, at the moment, there's no concrete links with a move outside of the club. Yes, we know of interest from clubs like Aston Villa and Newcastle, but Newcastle were more recently linked with Marc Cucurella. There's no guarantees that he leaves, and that's fine. If he doesn't go, that's absolutely fine. What I would say is that the issue Arsenal have is that this is probably the window they get the most money for him. If they don't sell him in this window, I don't know how much money you're going to be able to get for him next summer when he has 1 year left on his deal. I don't know if you're going to be able to convince him to sign a new contract. So if they are going to sell him, if he is going to go in the next couple of years, you're better off selling him, I think, now, because you're going to get the most money for him. But if he does stay, then you've got a very good alternative to Zinchenko still at the club. So there is an element of win-win, I suppose, about that. Tim says, can we have a tactical breakdown, a comparison of Nketiah and Balogun? We could. I mean, I don't know. I think it would show you the fairly obvious stats that Balogun has done better, but it's difficult because the context of playing in Liga, like swap the players around. If Balogun was the number 2 at Arsenal this season and Nketiah was playing in Reims this season, I don't know how much of a difference we would see. It's impossible to know, but I don't know if there'd be too much of a difference in the goal output if Nketiah was playing in France, because he is a goal scorer. When he starts regularly, he does get goals. And if Balogun was here and playing as understudy to Jesus, would we have seen that much difference in the goal scoring? I don't know. But it's what's difficult when you compare players outside of leagues, because the context is always so different. Statistical comparisons, do have their benefits, but there are also a lot of contextual restrictions on statistical comparisons between players. So there you go. Tierney's apparently contracted to 2026. So there you go. It's 3 years. So we'll have 2 years next summer. So still a relatively good, strong position for Arsenal to be in. So I suppose they've still got a good chance of getting good money for him next season. But let's see what happens. Time will tell on Tierney's future. But I hope that if he moves on, we get a good fee. And if he doesn't, then he's a very good asset for the team into next season as well. Elliot says, hey, Tom, do you trust Arteta's talent ID to take a risk and bring in Kai Havertz, Martin Odegaard, Ben White, Gabriel Magalhaes, Gabriel Jesus, Alexander Zinchenko? Yes, I do trust Arteta's talent ID. Absolutely, of course I do. Darren says, Tom, how about Arsenal going after Liverpool's targets, Kone and Thuram? They seem to be potentially good midfield targets. Yes, obviously the question mark with those players is they haven't played in England. And, if you're buying players outside of the Premier League, there's always an associated risk with a player like that that's greater than that of a player that's already in the Premier League. And I think that the big thing that Arteta has changed about Arsenal's kind of recruitment process is that he switched from Arsenal under Arsene Wenger, where you looked at a lot of players outside of England because financially it was better for us to do that. And instead, what we're seeing is more players being targeted from within the Premier League. And I think from that perspective, we are looking ultimately at Arsenal moving in a direction of trying to sign Premier League ready players. And that has subsequently seen Arsenal push forwards and push upwards in the table. The Emirates Favour says, Tom, why are you only naming the ones that Arteta's got right? I think for me, as I've talked about on the channel a number of times, you have to talk about the investments. You have to talk about the investments. Yes, we can talk about the Willians, the Runnissons, the Pablo Maries, the Cedrics of this world. But if you compare the investment that's been made on players, and I've talked about this a number of times, so sorry for repeating myself for people that moan about me doing so, but the Willian was a free, Cedric was a free, Marie was like 8 million quid, Runnisson was 2 million quid. Fabio Vieira was the significant kind of question mark at the moment at 34 million pounds. But Ben White at 50 million, Gabriel at 25 million-ish, Zinchenko at 30, Ødegaard at 32, Gabriel Jesus at 45. You know, the Tomiyasu at around 20. Lukonga and Tavares, of course, lower figures, 15 and 7 respectively. When we've made investments, you know, big investments on players, we've seen success, real success with those players. And it's the players that we haven't invested big money in, 9 times out of 10, Fabio Vieira being the exception, where things have not necessarily gone as well. So when it comes to Arsenal investing bigger money into players, we've got a lot more hits than misses. So, and we've seen Arsenal move in a direction forwards. We've gone from 11th when Arteta took us over to a title race that no one expected last season. So I was naming the ones that Arteta got right because I was talking in the sense of the bigger investments that we've made, which of course Kai Havertz would of course fall into that category, and we would hope that. But I've also, and you have to be magnanimous in this and admit that I've also sat here and said a number of times that he's a risk. Kai Havertz is a really big risk. And if it doesn't go well, Arteta's got to take the fall from that. It's got to take the fall for it. Justice says, Tom, will you go on a date with Arteta? Oh, you know, that'd be great. It'd be great to just sit down, have a chat, glass of wine. We know Arteta likes his wine. You know, remember the old meme? It'd be great. But, you know, I've sat down and spoken with Arteta a number of times already in press conferences, and he's quite cold. You know, he's quite cold with questions. So I'm not sure he'd be the most giving in a date scenario. I think I'd be doing a lot more of the talking. But Justice, I hope that you're good and well, my friends, and I hope that you're happy in this world. Melissa says, aren't you concerned about Declan's low demands at West Ham United, who don't play pressing nor attacking football and largely sit back to defend? Might struggle in that demanding lone six role possessing Arsenal. I do highlight people to go and watch how Declan Rice plays in the England national side. He's been a big part of obviously going to get into that European final, you know, progressing through the World Cup stages in the last tournament as well. You know, when he plays in that England team, I think he shines. I think he really impresses. So, yes, he's playing under a West Ham side that are very different to Arsenal, and he's going to have to learn some things coming into Arsenal, sure. But I'm sorry, but the impressive defensive nature of his game, you know, I did a piece recently about it, and I'll happily quote you some of the statistics surrounding Declan Rice, but they are very impressive indeed. I'm seeing if I can find it. Here it is. And let me find it. So he played the 17th highest number of minutes of any player in the Premier League. Only 16 players played more minutes than him. Reliable. In terms of interceptions, he had the highest number of interceptions of any player in the entirety of the Premier League. Any player at all, 63. The highest after that was Moises Caicedo, Idrissa Gueye, and Cheikh Doucouré, who had 56. In terms of tackling dribblers, he sits with a 62% success rate, which is in the 96th percentile of midfielders in Europe's top 5 leagues. And it doesn't end there because Rice only lost 0.52 challenges per 90, which means, again, he ranked in the 96th percentile for challenges lost, which means he barely ever lost a challenge. And lastly, in the defensive side of things, and probably his most standout of all, Rice's ball recoveries of 9.18 per 90. I'm going to say that one more time for those at the back. 9.18 per 90 is in the 99th percentile of not just players in his position in the Premier League, in players in his position across the top 5 leagues in the world. So, and then we look at his passing. You look at some of those statistics. The end of the season, having made the 10th most passes of any Premier League player at 2,083, and only one Arsenal player managed to get more than that, which was Gabriel Magalhaes, a defender. So, and West Ham, you think about possession stats at West Ham. It's not the same as Arsenal, so to clock in with that many passes in a season is great. And then in terms of his pass variety as well, over medium and long distances, he ranks really well. For long passes, he has 6.13 per 90, which is ranked as the 83rd percentile according to FBref. But also then in medium pass distances between 15 and 30-yard passes, 93.2% accuracy. Which is in the 95th percentile, and he managed 20.21 of those medium passes per 90 as well. So he's going to add passing variation to Arsenal as well, should we be successful. And Red Smoke, thank you for your donation. Tom, do you reckon Arsenal will land Rice? I'm very optimistic. I'm very optimistic about this, but you can never, ever say never. So, as Matthew says, so you're saying he's pretty decent. That is exactly what I am saying on that. So yes, indeed. Let's go to Robert says, ones Arteta's got wrong minus the ones Raul Senya invested in is Tavares, Lokonga and Vieira. Vieira scored against Brentford 30 yards. Do we think that we're being a bit harsh? I think with Vieira, of course, we still need to see more. I've got a 2-season rule. 2 seasons is what you get at Arsenal these days. 1 season I allow for transition. 2nd season, you have to be a success, otherwise you're gone. You have to be ruthless with the squad at the end of the day. And if Fabio Vieira doesn't do it for us this season, depending on a lot of factors, then we need to be looking at moving him on. Pablo Mira, Pablo, good to see you in the chat, my friend. Tom, do you think Rice and Lavia is an improvement on Partey and Xhaka's partnership? Maybe not immediately, because obviously Lavia is a player that he's 19. There's a lot of question marks about him, and Partey and Xhaka are very established. Rice, for me, is an upgrade on both of those players. I think Rice will add so much quality. I think people underestimate Rice. I think people calling him overrated don't and haven't watched him enough personally. I think that his consistency is much better than Partey's, and I think that what he will bring, his reliability in terms of availability and at that performance level across a whole season is higher than that of Partey. But Partey's kind of max level has been higher than that. So when Partey's been playing at his best, he probably shines a bit more than what Rice does, because Rice is still at 24, got a lot more improving to do. Xhaka has been brilliant. The expectation that someone can come in and do what Xhaka did last season is going to be tough. But also we might be changing the structure of that midfield 3. We might see Havertz and Ødegaard play as hybrid 8-10s, similar to how Havertz played at Bayer Leverkusen. We might see something different. We might see Arsenal bring in another midfielder that, like, we've made an offer for Ilkay Gundogan. Could it be him that comes in? So would Gundogan and Rice be an upgrade on Partey and Xhaka? For me, I think potentially. So, yeah, there's obviously question marks, but we're going to have to wait and see. Time will tell. Let's go to Charlie says, football is in your face. Corruption now. What's happening with Chelsea United takeover is just a joke. Of course, I'm just hoping that if there's anything that goes on in the world of football that needs to be looked at, that it is. But we have seen time and time again. If you haven't seen the FIFA documentary, I recommend you going and doing that. It's unfortunately becoming a fabric of the sport, which it shouldn't be. And we've just got to hope that things are maintained as best as we can. Boss says, hi, Tom. If you have that rule for Vieira, does that mean that if Smith Rowe doesn't shine next season, he has to be gone? I think I said in terms of new signings, to be fair, is what I said. 2-season rule for new signings. Smith Rowe is a difficult one. It's made trickier by the injury he suffered this season. It wasn't like he was signed. He signed a new contract, but then had significant surgery, which ruined half of his season and then effectively ruined the end of the season as well, because he just couldn't get into match fitness because he wasn't playing enough games and we didn't have enough games to give him. He missed those Europa League group stage games. So no, boss, my theory is very much for new signings more than it is for the existing kind of talent coming through. It's very different how you manage certain players. Let's go to Zung, maybe. Sorry if I've pronounced that incorrectly. Thoughts on Tomiyasu's future? Do you think that we should be selling because of the injuries? No, I don't. I don't think there's any need to sell Tomiyasu. Yes, the injuries are frustrating. Yes, he's had a significant number of them. The knee injury that he suffered recently, that's not like a injury-prone thing. A knee ligament rupture is often through a really unfortunate turn of the body, a slip, a bad challenge. It's really unlucky. It's not like an injury-prone player gets that injury if they've never had that type of problem before. So I have sympathy for the guy, but no, I wouldn't be getting rid of him anyway. He's not going to be, I don't think he's going to be available until maybe even the window is closed. So we're not going to move him on this summer, at least. I like Tomiyasu. I think he adds great depth. I think he's shown. I think people are quick to forget some of the performances that he's put in. I think about the Liverpool home game this season, where he absolutely locked down that left-hand side against Salah and Nunez to the best of his abilities. Yes, they did score a couple of goals, but I think that he was absolutely imperative in Arsenal winning that game with his defensive security that he brought. So I look forward to Tomiyasu returning. I look forward to him coming back, and I think he's an asset to this side. Pepteta says, hello from Oman in the Middle East. I love your show. Thanks, mate. Do you think Rob Holding will be staying with us this season? I hope not. I think that Arsenal need to move on from Rob Holding personally, and I think he needs to move on for his own career and play regularly somewhere else. But never say never these days. Anyway, we are going to wrap things up there. Thank you so much for tuning in. I really appreciate the time that you give to the channel, as always. Thank you to everybody in the chat box and even the haters, of course, always. Much love to you. Hope you're safe and well and enjoying yourselves. Do indeed drop a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new around here, and continue to join us across the course of the transfer window at 8 a.m. UK time every single morning. It's been great. It's been emotional. Who knows? A date with Arteta. Oh, that'd be great. See you soon, guys. Have a fantastic start to your week. And I'll see you later on this evening on the Highbury squads. But have a fantastic day. And as always, up the Arsenal.